The last thing Fleet Marshal Drax's Corps expected from a human mining outpost was silence. Not the silence of an empty system, not the silence of the dead. This was a different kind of silence, the kind that waited. Draxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Voss Ascendant, watching the tactical display fill with lazy green dots. 12 warships. One insignificant human outpost called Kepler's Rest, orbiting a dull yellow star at the edge of contested space. His officers had briefed him twice already, and both times he had laughed. "They have no shields worth mentioning," said his tactical officer, a thin Voskar named Sethes. "No warships in orbit. Their weapons are mining lasers repurposed for defense. Population under 4,000. "And this is the species everyone whispers about?" Draxus said, amused. "This is the great mystery of the newcomers." Sethes hesitated. "Fleet Marshal, there are reports. Older empires avoid human territory. There is something called the Silence Incident that—" "A children's story," Draxus snapped, "told by cowards to excuse their own weakness. Humans have been among the stars for what, 60 years? They have no history, no empire, no fleet worth the name. They are soft, short-lived, and slow. I will take this outpost in a single day, and when I present it to the Dominion Council, no one will whisper about humans again. They will whisper about me." He said this with such certainty that even the doubters on his bridge fell quiet. Kepler's Rest did not look like a place worth fearing. From orbit, it was a cluster of gray domes and mining rigs clinging to a rust-colored moon, tethered to the stars by thin lines of light, supply routes, sensor arrays, nothing that resembled a military installation. The Voskar scouts who had studied it for weeks reported nothing unusual. No hidden fleets, no secret weapons, just miners, engineers, and a handful of researchers living quiet lives far from home. What the scouts did not report, because they could not see it, was the calm. Inside the outpost's command center, Commander Elena Reyes watched the same tactical display the Voskar were watching, except from the opposite side. 12 warships, her own defenses, outdated, improvised, barely worth the name. On paper, the math was simple. Kepler's Rest should not survive the day. Elena did not look afraid. She looked tired, the way a person looks when they have done this kind of waiting before. 12 ships, said Marcus Webb, the outpost's chief engineer, standing beside her with his arms crossed. He was a broad-shouldered man with grease permanently worked into the lines of his hands, more comfortable with machines than people. "That's not a scouting party, Elena. That's an invasion fleet." "I know what it is," Elena said quietly. "Command hasn't answered our distress call. We're not getting reinforcements in time. Maybe not at all." "I know that too." Marcus studied her face, searching for panic and finding none. "You're not surprised?" "I've been waiting for something like this for a long time," she admitted. "I just didn't think it would happen here." Across the room, a young woman with dark hair and quick eyes looked up from a console covered in shifting alien script. This was Priya Anand, the outpost's xenolinguist, barely 5 years out of university and already fluent in 3 non-human languages. She had joined Kepler's Rest for the research opportunities, not for war. "I'm picking up their communications," Priya said. "They're not even trying to hide their approach vector. They don't think we can intercept it." "Can we?" Marcus asked. "I already am." Priya's fingers moved fast across the console. "Their fleet commander is calling us. A trophy conquest. He's already drafting his victory report." A tense silence settled over the command center. Then Elena spoke, and her voice was calm in a way that made the others calm too, the way a steady hand calms a trembling one. "Then let's not disappoint him," she said. "Marcus, I need the outer defense grid rerouted through the mining lasers. Priya, keep listening. I want to know everything they say, especially what they don't say to each other." "And the civilians?" Marcus asked. "Sub-level 3, Elena said. "Quietly. No panic. We've drilled this before." Marcus nodded and moved to his station, already running calculations. his fingers steady despite the ships closing in above them. Elena watched him work and allowed herself, just for a moment, to remember why she had accepted this posting in the first place. Kepler's Rest was supposed to be quiet, a place to disappear, a place where nobody asked about her past. That illusion was ending fast. On the bridge of the Voss Ascendant, Sethis approached Draxus with a data slate, his expression uneasy. "Fleet Marshal, our long-range sensors just registered a power surge on the outpost. Their defense grid is reconfiguring." Draxus barely glanced at it. "Let them rearrange their little lasers. It changes nothing." "There's something else," Sethis said, lowering his voice. "Command sent an updated intelligence packet an hour ago. It references older records sealed under Dominion security protocols. The file is labeled Silence Incident, Human Contact Advisory. I couldn't open it. Clearance level is above mine, above yours even." For the first time, something flickered across Draxus's face. Not fear, but irritation, the look of a man being interrupted by something beneath his notice. "Then it is not relevant to this operation. We are not fighting whatever ancient story frightened some coward a generation ago. We are fighting miners and researchers on a rock at the edge of nowhere." "Understood, Fleet Marshal." Sethis did not sound convinced, but he said nothing more. Draxus turned back to the viewport, watching Kepler's Rest grow larger as his fleet closed the distance. He pictured the battle already, swift, decisive, humiliating for the enemy. He would land his troops, secure the outpost within hours, and broadcast his victory to every corner of the Dominion. The so-called newcomers, the species that made older empires nervous for reasons no one could properly explain, would be exposed as nothing, ordinary, beatable, small. "Bring the fleet into attack formation," he ordered. Full sensor sweep of the outpost and surrounding space. I want to know every rock, every ship, every hiding place before we begin." The order was carried out immediately. Sensor arrays across all 12 ships activated at once, sweeping space around Kepler's Rest with practiced precision, cataloging every object down to the smallest debris field. For a moment, everything appeared normal. Empty space, a quiet moon, a defenseless outpost. Then, ship by ship, the sensor readings began to blur. "Fleet Marshal," Sethis said, his voice suddenly tight, "we're losing resolution on our scans. Something is interfering with—" The lights on the bridge flickered. "Report," Draxus snapped. "I don't know," Sethis said, staring at his console in disbelief. "Sir, the outpost isn't scanning as it did an hour ago. The data doesn't match. It's like the entire system just changed shape." Draxus stepped forward, his amusement finally gone, replaced by something colder. On the display, Kepler's Rest sat exactly where it had always been, small, gray, unremarkable. Except now, for reasons no one on the bridge could explain, none of their sensors could see past its outer defense grid at all. The screen flickered once more, and then, ship by ship, every scan the Voskar fleet had gathered on Kepler's Rest simply went dark. The first Voskar soldier to step through the airlock of Kepler's Rest died before he understood what killed him. Sub-Marshal Yoren led the ground assault himself, eager to prove his worth to Draxus. 200 soldiers descended in armored landers, expecting to meet frightened miners and disorganized researchers. Instead, they found an outpost that looked abandoned. The main corridors were empty, lights dimmed to standby, doors sealed. No alarms, no screaming, no chaotic evacuation, just quiet, controlled stillness, as if the entire facility had simply gone to sleep. "This is wrong," Yoren muttered, scanning the empty halls through his helmet display. "Where is everyone?" "Perhaps they fled," suggested a junior officer beside him. "Fled to where?" Yoren snapped. "This is a moon. There is nowhere to flee to." He ordered his soldiers forward in formation, sweeping through the outer sections of the outpost. Everything looked untouched. Consoles still running, personal belongings left on desks, half-finished meals in the cafeteria. It was the emptiness of a place that had been prepared, not abandoned in panic. Then the lights went out completely. For 3 seconds, there was only darkness and the sound of 200 armored soldiers breathing inside their helmets. Then the mining lasers activated. They came from angles no Voskar soldier expected, embedded in maintenance shafts, disguised as structural supports, positioned along corridors that seemed too narrow to matter. Precise, controlled bursts of heat and light cut through the first wave before they even understood they were under attack. There was no chaotic spray of fire, no wasted shots. Every strike found its mark. Yoren barely escaped with his life, dragging 2 surviving soldiers behind a collapsed support beam as beams of light sliced past them. "Report! Report!" he shouted into his comm. Static answered him at first, then a broken voice. "First platoon is gone, sir. Second platoon, 60% casualties. We didn't even see them." Yoren stared into the darkness ahead, his heart's pounding. This was not how conquest was supposed to feel. Above the outpost, Draxus received the reports with visible disbelief. "Explain this to me," he said coldly. "You told me this species had no meaningful defenses." "Fleet Marshal, our scan showed nothing," Sethis said, hands trembling slightly over his console. "They must have concealed weapon systems beneath the surface structures. This level of coordination, this precision, it isn't the work of miners." "Then who is it the work of?" Sethis had no answer. Deep beneath the outpost, in a hardened sublevel shielded from sensors, Elena Reyes watched the battle unfold on a bank of monitors, her expression unreadable. Around her, colonists huddled quietly, calm because she was calm, trusting the woman who had drilled them for exactly this moment more times than any of them wanted to remember. Marcus stood beside her, hands still moving across his console, adjusting power output to the defense grid in real time. "First wave neutralized," he said. "They walked right into it." "They didn't expect resistance," Elena said, "which means they'll adjust. Next wave will be more careful." "You don't sound relieved." "I'm not," Elena said. This was the easy part. Priya's voice cut in through the comm, tense and urgent. "Elena, I'm listening to their command channel. Their fleet commander, Draxus, he's furious. He's ordering an orbital bombardment. Full spread, no restrictions." Marcus's head snapped up. "They're going to level the whole facility." "He thinks we're hiding behind conventional defenses," Priya said. "He doesn't understand what he's fighting. He's about to make a mistake." Elena's jaw tightened, but her voice remained level. "Then we let him make it. Marcus, status on the deep shielding?" "Online," Marcus said. "It'll hold against orbital bombardment, but not forever. If he commits everything, we're looking at hours, not days." "Then we use those hours," Elena said. On the surface, Yoren regrouped his remaining forces in a defensible position near the outpost's outer perimeter, waiting for new orders and trying to understand what he had just witnessed. His soldiers were seasoned veterans of a dozen campaigns across the Dominion's border wars. None of them had faced anything like this. "Sir," said a soldier beside him, voice shaking slightly. "The way they fought, it wasn't random. It was like they knew exactly where we would be before we knew ourselves." Yoren said nothing, because he had noticed the same thing. Every ambush point had been chosen with surgical precision. Every kill shot had been efficient, almost merciful in its economy. No wasted destruction, no unnecessary cruelty, just calculated, devastating force. That control unsettled him more than the deaths themselves. His comm crackled, Draxus's voice cold and commanding. "Sub-Marshal, withdraw your remaining forces to the landers immediately. The fleet will begin orbital bombardment in 10 minutes. Fleet Marshal, with respect, if there are civilians still on the surface." "There are no civilians, Sub-Marshal. There are enemies who chose to disguise themselves as civilians. Withdraw your forces." "That is an order." Yoren hesitated, then complied, pulling his surviving soldiers back toward the landers as the fleet above began preparing for bombardment. In the command center's ruins, Priya monitored the shift in Voskar communications with growing alarm. "They're pulling back their ground forces," she reported. "Full withdrawal. Bombardment in 10 minutes. They're going to try to erase the whole facility," Marcus said grimly. "Elena, If that bombardment hits full force, deep shielding or not, we're going to lose people. Elena's eyes moved across the monitors, taking in the retreating Voskar soldiers, the fleet repositioning in orbit, the countdown Priya had translated from their command channel. For the first time since the attack began, something like real worry crossed her face. Not for herself, but for the 4,000 people counting on her judgment. Bring the colonists to the deepest shelter level, she ordered. All of them, now. And the defense grid? Marcus asked. Elena was quiet for a moment, weighing something heavier than tactics. Then she said the words Marcus had been waiting to hear since the fleet first appeared in orbit. Activate the secondary system. Marcus's hands froze over the console. Elena, are you sure? Once that's online, there's no pretending anymore. They'll know exactly what this place really is. They're about to bombard 4,000 people from orbit, Elena said quietly. I think pretending stopped being an option the moment they laughed at us. Marcus nodded slowly and began entering a sequence of commands he had trained on, but never actually executed. A system buried so deep in the outpost's design that even most of the staff didn't know it existed. Above them, the Voskar fleet finished repositioning, weapons charging for a bombardment meant to erase Kepler's rest from the star charts entirely. And far beneath the surface, hidden systems that had waited patiently for years finally began, for the first time, to wake up. The ground trembled. Somewhere deep in the moon's rock, ancient machinery groaned to life. And on every Voskar sensor screen in orbit, a new and impossible reading appeared. Something rising from beneath Kepler's rest, that no scan, no intelligence report, and no amount of confidence had ever prepared them to see. The reading on the Voskar sensors vanished as quickly as it appeared, and for a moment, everyone aboard the Vos Ascendant wondered if they had imagined it. Sethis, Draxus said, voice tight. What was that? I don't know, Fleet Marshal. Sethi stared at his console, replaying the brief spike in the data. A power surge from beneath the outpost. It vanished before we could analyze it properly. Could be a decoy. Could be their shielding compensating for the bombardment prep. Or it could be nothing, Draxus said, forcing certainty back into his voice. Continue bombardment sequence. But something had shifted in the room, a thread of doubt working its way through officers who, an hour ago, had been confident of an easy victory. Deep beneath Kepler's rest, in the shelter that now held nearly the entire population of the outpost, Elena sat alone for a rare, quiet moment, watching the monitors from a side console while Marcus finished routing the last of the secondary systems. The bombardment hadn't started yet. There was time, not much, but enough for memory to catch up with her. She remembered another moon, another outpost, another fleet in orbit. She had been 11 years old. Her family had lived on a border colony very much like this one, unremarkable, quiet, easily overlooked, until it wasn't. She remembered the sound the walls made when the first strikes hit, the way her mother had held her so tightly it hurt, the long hours in a shelter not unlike this one, waiting for a rescue that came, but came too late for many. She had never told anyone at Kepler's Rest the full story, not even Marcus. It was easier to be the calm commander than the frightened child who had survived something most people only heard about in old records nobody liked to open. You've gone quiet, Marcus said, sitting down beside her, breaking her thoughts. Just thinking, Elena said. About the bombardment? About why I took this posting, she said. Everyone thinks frontier duty is for people chasing adventure. I took it because I understood something most people don't want to understand. That peace is fragile, and someone has to be ready when it breaks. Marcus studied her for a long moment. You've done this before, not the drills. The real thing. Elena didn't answer directly, but her silence was answer enough. You don't have to tell me, Marcus said gently. I know, Elena said, but you should know why I insisted on restraint earlier. Why I didn't want to reveal everything at once, even when it would have been easier to just end this fast and hard. I've seen what happens when the frightened side strikes first and hard out of fear. I don't want to become that. Not even to protect this place. Marcus considered that. And now? Now they've forced my hand, Elena said. But even the response we're preparing, it's not meant to slaughter them. It's meant to make them stop. There's a difference, and it matters to me. Before Marcus could respond, Priya's voice broke through the calm, tense and urgent. Elena, Marcus, I need you to see something. I've been going through the intercepted transmissions, cross-referencing with older linguistic records I brought from my research files. I think I found something important. They moved quickly to Priya's station, where she had a Voskar soldier restrained but unharmed, the sole survivor of a small squad that had been separated during the retreat and captured rather than killed on Elena's explicit orders. He was young, his armor dented, his posture defeated rather than defiant. This is Private Kess, Priya said. He's been talking, not because I forced him, because he's scared, and scared people talk. Kess looked up at Elena with something between fear and confusion. You didn't kill me, he said, voice uncertain. Yoren said humans destroy everything they touch, that you're monsters wearing peaceful faces. Is that what they teach you? Elena asked quietly. It's what everyone says, Kess admitted. The older empires warn their young soldiers about human territory. They say there's a reason no one attacks you twice. Elena exchanged a glance with Marcus. Tell her what you told me about the council orders, Priya said gently. Kess hesitated, then continued. Before we departed, Fleet Marshal Draxus received a classified directive. Something about a cultural conquest. Command didn't just want your outpost destroyed. They wanted it erased, records, colonists, everything, as an example. A warning to prevent human expansion into this sector before it grows too strong to stop. The words landed heavily in the room. They're not just trying to take the outpost, Priya said. They're trying to erase every trace that humans were ever here. This isn't a raid. It's meant to be a message to every other human colony nearby. Stay small, or be wiped out quietly before anyone notices. Marcus's expression darkened. That changes things. It confirms what I feared, Elena said, her voice hardening slightly. This was never about resources or territory. It's about fear. They're afraid of what humanity might become if left alone long enough to grow. Why? Priya asked. We're not even that advanced compared to most Dominion worlds. Why fear us at all? Kess spoke again, quieter this time. Because of the stories, the silence incident. Nobody talks about it directly. It's classified even to most officers, but everyone knows the shape of it. Decades ago, an empire tried something like this. A test. A demonstration of dominance against a human world. What happened afterward made every major power in this region agree, quietly, never to provoke humanity directly again. What happened? Marcus asked. Kess shook his head. I don't know details. No one does, not really. Just that it was enough to make empires far older and stronger than the Dominion back away completely. Elena's face remained composed, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or old grief resurfacing. Priya noticed it immediately. Elena, do you know something about this? Before Elena could answer, an alarm cut through the shelter, sharp and urgent. Bombardment sequence detected, Marcus said, eyes snapping to his console. They're not waiting anymore. Full spread, incoming in 2 minutes. Elena's expression shifted instantly from contemplation to command. Get everyone braced. Marcus deep shielding to maximum. Priya, keep Kess secure, but keep listening. I want to know the second Draxus changes his orders. As the crew scrambled into position, sirens wailing through the shelter, Elena allowed herself one final thought before the bombardment began. A memory of another shelter, another set of walls trembling under fire, and a promise she had made to herself as a child that she intended to keep no matter what it cost her. Above the outpost, Draxus stood on his bridge, watching the countdown reach its final seconds, unaware that the classified priority transmission now blinking urgently on Sethus's secondary console, flagged with a clearance code he had never seen before, carried a warning that could have stopped everything. if only he chose to read it before it was too late. The bombardment hit like the sky itself had cracked open. Deep in the shelter, the ground shook with each impact, dust raining from the ceiling as colonists huddled together, children crying quietly into parents' shoulders, everyone trying not to imagine what was happening to the world above them. Elena stood at the center console, watching the deep shielding readouts climb dangerously as strike after strike pounded the surface. "Shielding at 70%, Marcus reported, voice tight with concentration. "They're not holding back." "Bombardment lasting longer than expected," Priya added, monitoring the Voskar command channel. "Draxus is furious. He expected the outpost to be gone by now." On the surface, what remained of the mining domes and research buildings collapsed under relentless fire, but the outpost's true structure, buried deep, reinforced, patient, held. Sensor readings from orbit showed devastation, craters, fires, exactly what Draxus wanted to see. What his sensors couldn't show him was that almost no one had died. "Cease bombardment," Draxus finally ordered, satisfaction creeping into his voice as he watched the surface burn on his display. "Send in the shock troops. I want confirmation of the kill count personally." Yoren, still recovering from the earlier ambush, felt a cold unease settle in his chest as he prepared his elite unit for deployment. Soldiers handpicked from 100 campaigns, veterans of conflicts that had crushed far larger forces than this outpost supposedly possessed. He had lost soldiers before. He had never lost them the way he lost them here. "Sir," he said quietly to Draxus over comm, "requesting permission to reassess before committing our best unit." "Denied," Draxus snapped. "I want this finished. Deploy immediately." The shock troops descended into a landscape of ruin and smoke, expecting to find broken survivors, easy targets, the final confirmation of victory. Instead, they found something far more unsettling. Coordinated resistance rising from the wreckage with brutal precision. Human defenders emerged from hidden positions within the rubble, not soldiers in the traditional sense, Yoren realized with growing horror, but ordinary colonists and researchers who moved and fought with training that belonged to veterans, not minors. They used the ruined terrain itself as a weapon, funneling Voskar forces into collapsed corridors where fire came from 3 directions at once. "This isn't possible," Yoren muttered, watching his elite soldiers fall in numbers that should have been impossible against a civilian population. "These people are not what we were told." In the command shelter, Elena watched the battle unfold on her monitors, her face a careful mask of control, even as her chest tightened with every reported casualty. Not Voskar casualties, but the injuries mounting among her own people. People she had trained and trusted and now watched bleed for a fight none of them had asked for. "We have wounded," Marcus reported. "Sector 4, Sector 7, medical teams responding." "Get them stabilized," Elena said. "Fall back to secondary positions. We're not trying to win this fight outright. We're trying to survive it long enough to end it properly." A commotion near the medical station drew her attention. A young colonist, barely more than a teenager, one of the outpost's junior technicians, had been caught in a collapsed corridor during the retreat, pinned beneath debris with Voskar soldiers advancing nearby. Without hesitation, Elena moved. "Elena, don't—" Marcus started, but she was already gone, moving through the chaos toward the trapped technician with a speed and precision that surprised even him. She reached the boy, Daniel, just as 2 Voskar soldiers rounded the corner. In the space of a few heartbeats, Elena disarmed the first with a controlled strike Marcus had never seen her use before, and dropped the second with a single brutally efficient shot from a sidearm she hadn't drawn since the drills first began. She pulled the trapped boy free, hauling him over her shoulder despite the debris cutting into her hands, and retreated to cover as reinforcements arrived. "You're bleeding," Daniel said weakly, noticing the gash along her arm. "I'll live," Elena said. "You focus on that." Later, once Daniel was safely in medical care, Marcus found Elena alone in a side corridor, quietly wrapping her wound herself, refusing assistance. "That wasn't standard defense training," he said carefully. "What you did back there?" "No," Elena admitted. "It wasn't." "Elena, who are you really?" She looked up at him, exhaustion and old sorrow briefly visible before her composure returned. Someone who's seen this exact kind of fight before, Marcus. Someone who promised herself a long time ago that if it ever happened again, she wouldn't just survive it. She'd make sure it never happened to anyone else, not on her watch. Before Marcus could press further, Priya's voice cut through urgently. Elena, you need to hear this. I just intercepted a priority transmission meant for Draxus directly. Dominion High Command sent it hours ago. He never opened it. What does it say? Elena asked. It's flagged with clearance codes I've never seen. References to something called Silence Protocol. The message is urgent, repeated 3 times. It says, withdraw immediately, confirm human presence and abort engagement. This is not a request. Marcus frowned. Why would Command send that after already approving the attack? I don't know, Priya said. But whoever sent it knew something about human territory that made them desperate enough to override direct assault orders. And Draxus is ignoring it. On the bridge of the Voss Ascendant, Sethis approached Draxus one final time, holding the blinking priority message with visible unease. Fleet Marshal, I must insist you review this. It's from High Command directly. The clearance level alone should concern you. Draxus snatched the data slate from him, eyes scanning the message with growing irritation rather than alarm. Withdraw immediately? After I've already committed my fleet? After I've already lost soldiers proving my resolve? He laughed bitterly. This is exactly the kind of cowardice that started the rumors in the first place. Someone in High Command lost their nerve decades ago, and now they expect me to abandon a certain victory because of ancient ghost stories. Fleet Marshal, the clearance code is irrelevant, Draxus snapped, crushing the data slate's authority with sheer stubbornness. We continue the assault. Full commitment. I want every remaining ship in this fleet in attack position within the hour. Sethis hesitated, torn between duty and dread, but said nothing further as Draxus turned back to the viewport, staring down at the burning outpost with grim determination. Beneath the surface, Elena received Priya's report with a stillness that unsettled everyone around her. He's not backing down, Priya said. He's committing everything. Elena closed her eyes briefly, as if steadying herself against a weight only she could feel. When she opened them again, her voice carried a certainty that left no room for doubt. Then he's chosen for us, she said quietly. Marcus, bring the full defense network online, not the mining lasers, not the secondary systems, all of it. Marcus stared at her, understanding exactly what she meant, his expression torn between relief and dread. Elena, once that's active, there's no controlling how this ends. You understand that? I do, Elena said. But he's about to commit his entire fleet against 4,000 people who never asked for this fight. I won't let this end with our graves and his victory speech. She turned to the command console, entering a sequence she had hoped never to use again, her hands steady despite everything. Above Kepler's rest as Draxus's remaining ships moved into final attack formation, the moon beneath them trembled once more. Not with the tremor of bombardment this time, but with something far more deliberate, as ancient systems long dormant beneath the outpost's surface finally, fully awakened. The moon itself seemed to breathe. On every Voskar sensor screen, new readings bloomed across Kepler's rest. Power signatures too large, too structured, too precise to belong to a mining outpost. Draxus stared at his tactical display, his earlier confidence cracking for the first time since the invasion began. Sethis, explain this, he demanded. I can't, Fleet Marshal, Sethis said, voice shaking. These readings don't match anything in our intelligence files. It's like an entire second facility just came online beneath the one we've been attacking. In the command shelter, Priya finished her cross-reference of the captured intelligence and the intercepted high command transmission, her expression pale as the pieces finally aligned. Elena, I think I understand now. The silence incident wasn't a myth or an exaggeration. It happened. And it happened somewhere very much like this. Tell me, Elena said, though something in her voice suggested she already knew. Decades ago, before most current empires held their thrones, An older power tested humanity the same way Draxus is testing us now, Priya explained. They attacked a border colony, expecting an easy conquest against a young species with no history of galactic warfare. What they found instead was a response so overwhelming, so precisely devastating, that survivors from that empire spent years trying to explain what happened. Eventually, their leadership made a quiet decision, never publicized, never fully explained even within their own ranks, never provoke human territory directly again. That policy spread, empire to empire, whispered rather than written, until it became simply understood across most of known space. Marcus frowned. Why didn't the Dominion know this? Why would Draxus risk an entire fleet without at least investigating those rumors properly? Because rumors are easy to dismiss when ambition is louder, Priya said, and because whatever really happened during the Silence incident was buried so deep, only the oldest, most cautious power still remembered it clearly enough to fear it. Elena's expression remained carefully composed, but her eyes had gone distant, caught somewhere between the present and a memory she had spent years trying to keep buried. Elena, Marcus said gently, noticing. You know more about this, don't you? She was quiet for a long moment before finally speaking. Kepler's Rest isn't just a mining outpost, Marcus. It never was. I need you both to understand that before what happens next. Priya and Marcus exchanged a glance, but neither interrupted. Outposts like this one exist along several of humanity's border regions, Elena continued. Small, unassuming, deliberately unimpressive, staffed in part by people who survived what happened decades ago, people who understand exactly what it costs when a young species is tested by an empire that assumes weakness means an easy victory. We're not just here to mine resources or study alien contact. We're here because someone somewhere decided that humanity needed quiet sentinels along its borders, places that look defenseless, so that if anyone ever tries what Draxus just tried, we can respond properly, carefully, without needing help that might arrive too late. You're saying this outpost was built to be attacked, Marcus said slowly, the full weight of it settling over him. I'm saying it was built to be tested, Elena corrected, and to respond in a way that ends the testing permanently, without needless slaughter, without becoming what nearly destroyed us the first time. Priya's voice was barely above a whisper. The mining lasers, the ambush tactics, the hidden shelters. That was never the real defense, was it? No, Elena said. That was the first layer. Enough to make an aggressor commit fully, to reveal their true intentions, to give us time to be certain restraint had failed before escalating further. Draxus had chances to withdraw. His own high command tried to warn him. He chose to ignore every warning because his pride wouldn't allow him to imagine losing to a species he considered beneath him. Marcus looked at the rising power readings on his console, understanding now what they represented. And the true defense? Elena's expression hardened with quiet resolve. Designed to disable, not destroy. To dismantle a fleet without needing to kill everyone aboard it. To send aggressors home broken but alive, carrying a message no propaganda department could ever erase. Humanity does not attack first, and humanity does not want war, but push us into a corner, and you will lose more than the battle. You will lose the will to ever try again. Above the outpost, the newly awakened systems began locking onto Draxus's fleet with terrifying precision. Cephas watched in disbelief as targeting solutions bloomed across his display, each one calculated not for maximum destruction, but for maximum disablement. Engines, weapons, life support redundancies, all targeted with a level of surgical accuracy that suggested decades, perhaps longer, of careful design. Fleet Marshal, our engines are being locked by multiple targeting systems, Cephas reported, panic finally breaking through his professional composure. Weapons systems on 3 ships just went offline entirely. This isn't standard planetary defense, this is something else. Draxus stared at the display, his earlier arrogance finally giving way to something colder and more honest. Fear. Order immediate withdrawal, he said, voice tight. All ships, retreat to... "It's too late for that, sir," Sethis interrupted. "Our engines just went dark. We're not going anywhere." On the bridge of the Voss Ascendant, alarms began blaring across every station as, one by one, the ships of Draxus's proud invasion fleet found themselves stripped of mobility, weapons, and options, completely at the mercy of a species he had dismissed as harmless just hours before. In the command shelter beneath Kepler's Rest, Elena watched the same readings with a grim, steady focus, her hand resting briefly on the activation console before she gave the final order. "Bring the response online," she said quietly. "Full deployment." Marcus's hands hovered over the controls, hesitating only a moment before he understood there was no other path left. "Understood," he said, and initiated the sequence. The sky above Kepler's Rest lit up, not with the chaotic destruction of bombardment, but with something colder, more deliberate, more terrifying in its precision. Coordinated strikes swept across Draxus's fleet, disabling ship after ship with surgical accuracy, sparing life pods, sparing crew quarters, targeting only what needed to be targeted to end the fight permanently. Draxus stood frozen on his crippled bridge, staring at the devastation unfolding around him. Finally understanding, far too late, exactly what the silence incident had truly meant, and exactly what price he was about to pay for refusing to believe the warnings until the moment they became undeniable. 12 warships had entered the system with confidence. Less than an hour later, not one of them could move under its own power. Draxus stood on the ruined bridge of the Voss Ascendant, surrounded by sparking consoles and the low hum of failing systems, watching helplessly as the last of his fleet's weapons went dark across every remaining ship. Around him, his officers worked frantically to restore even partial control, but the outcome was already clear. They had lost, not through overwhelming slaughter, but through something colder and in its own way more humiliating, complete and total disablement. "Life support remains stable across all vessels," Sethis reported quietly, staring at his readouts in disbelief. "Weapons offline, engines offline, crew casualties, minimal fleet marshal. They didn't try to kill us. They stopped us." Draxus said nothing, staring out at the wreckage of his ambition, understanding at last the shape of the warning he had ignored. Beneath Kepler's Rest, in the command shelter that had held steady through bombardment, assault, and finally victory, Elena watched the same devastation with none of the triumph Draxus might have expected from a conquering force. Her expression was solemn, almost sorrowful, as she confirmed the final readings. "Fleet neutralized," Marcus reported, his voice quiet with the weight of what they had just done. "No further threat detected." "Casualties?" Elena asked. "Ours. 12 wounded, no fatalities," Marcus said. "Theirs." He paused, checking the readings again, almost surprised. "Minimal. The system worked exactly as designed. They're disabled, not destroyed." Priya looked between them, still processing everything she had learned in the past few hours. "You really meant it," she said quietly. "This was never about destroying them." "No," Elena said. "It was about making sure they never try this again, and making sure whoever they answer to understands exactly why." She turned to the young captured soldier, Kess, who had watched the entire battle unfold from a secure holding area, his expression a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You're letting them go," Kess said slowly, watching the readouts that confirmed the Voskar fleet, though crippled, remained largely intact and alive. "Even after everything, you're not going to finish it." "That was never the goal," Elena said, crouching slightly to meet his eyes directly. "You're going to go home, Kess, all of you who survive this, and you're going to tell your people exactly what you saw here. Not because we want you to fear us forever, but because we need you to understand something important. Humanity does not want this fight. We didn't start it. We won't start the next one either. But we will finish it every time if someone forces our hand." Kess studied her, confusion giving way slowly to something like understanding. "Why? Why not just destroy us completely? You had the power to do it." Elena's expression softened, old grief briefly visible beneath her composure. Because I know exactly what it feels like to be on the other side of a fleet like the one Draxus brought here, she said quietly. I was a child during an attack very much like this one, on a border colony very much like Kepler's Rest. I watched an empire assume my people were weak enough to conquer without consequence. I watched what it cost to survive proving them wrong. I promised myself, long before I ever took this posting, that if I ever had the power to stop something like that from happening again, I would use it carefully. Not out of weakness, Kess, out of the certainty that some prices are too heavy to make anyone else pay, even people trying to hurt us. The words settled over the room in heavy silence. Marcus and Priya exchanged a glance, finally understanding the full shape of the woman who had led them through this impossible day. Hours later, as the Voskar fleet began the slow, humiliating process of preparing for retreat under careful human oversight, Draxus received a final transmission from Kepler's Rest. Not a threat, not a demand for surrender, but a simple, direct message from Elena herself. Fleet Marshal Draxus, her voice came through steady and clear, broadcast to every remaining ship in his crippled fleet. Your soldiers are alive because we chose to let them live. Your ships are disabled, not destroyed, because we chose restraint even after you chose otherwise. Take this back to your Dominion Council, and make sure they understand clearly, humanity is not your enemy unless you insist on making us one. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek war, but we will always be ready for whoever tries to test that patience. Draxus listened in silence, humiliation and grudging respect warring across his face as the transmission ended. For the first time since arriving in this system, he found himself without a response worth giving. As the crippled fleet began its slow withdrawal, Yoren, battered, humbled, and alive against every expectation, approached Draxus quietly. Fleet Marshal, what do we tell the Council? Draxus was silent for a long moment, staring at the outpost shrinking behind them on the view screen. The truth, he said finally. All of it. Every warning I ignored. Every mistake I made. If I don't, someone else will make the same mistake, and next time, the outcome might be far worse. Back on Kepler's Rest, as the last Voskar ships limped out of the system, the outpost slowly returned to something resembling normal. Colonists emerged cautiously from shelters, surveying the damage to the surface structures, already beginning the quiet work of rebuilding. Children who had spent the day in fear found their way back to ordinary routines with the resilience only children truly possess. Life, stubborn and unbroken, continued. Elena stood alone near the outpost's damaged observation dome, watching the stars where the Voskar fleet had finally disappeared from sensor range. Marcus found her there, offering a quiet presence rather than words. You did the right thing, he said eventually. Letting them go. Sending that message instead of destroying them completely. I hope so, Elena said softly. I've spent a long time trying to make sure what happened to my colony never happens to anyone else on either side. Today I finally understood something I didn't fully believe until now. What's that? That surviving isn't the same as healing, she said. I've carried this for a long time, waiting for a moment like today, half expecting it to feel like justice when it finally came. It doesn't. It just feels like relief that it's over, and grief for everyone who never got the chance to see a day like this. Marcus placed a steady hand on her shoulder, and for once, Elena allowed herself to lean into that support instead of standing alone. Priya joined them a moment later, carrying a data slate with a final piece of information. Command finally responded to our distress call, she said. They're sending a proper relief fleet, along with acknowledgement of what happened here. Elena, they want to know how you did it, how this outpost held against a full invasion fleet with what looked like nothing more than mining equipment and outdated defenses. Elena managed a tired, genuine smile. Tell them the truth, she said. Tell them we're not as fragile as we look. We never have been. As the sun rose over the scarred but standing outpost, Kepler's Rest settled back into its quiet disguise. Gray domes, weary colonists, the appearance of an unremarkable mining post at the edge of nowhere. Beneath the surface, the true systems that had saved them all powered down once more, hidden, patient, waiting for a day that everyone hoped would never come again. Far across the stars, aboard a limping fleet returning home in disgrace, Draxus prepared to deliver a report that would ripple through the Dominion Council and beyond. A warning that would spread quietly from empire to empire, the way it had once before, decades ago, when another proud commander learned the same painful lesson about the quiet, unassuming species the galaxy had learned to call, with equal parts respect and fear, the newcomers. And on a small moon at the edge of contested space, Elena Reyes finally allowed herself to grieve, to rest, and for the first time in years, to believe that the promise she made as a frightened child had finally, truly, been kept.